Collaborative for your Zoom. It's great to be together today to experience what we're going to experience. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank Alameda Point Collaborative. You'll hear from them shortly, but they've been incredibly gracious and generous in terms of hosting this. And also, you'll hear about this more later. The proposal and the idea upon all of this base is something that they've been partnering with Build a Green and other folks who are working with the City of Alameda and other organizations here in Alameda. So it's lovely to have you here. And what we usually do at Build a Green is not jump in, start with the agenda and all that stuff. So we can have that slide, Sam, just be the title slide for now. It's okay. And on Zoom, you'll have a slightly different cadence. So you still should be seeing the title slide. But I just want folks to think a lot of what we do at Build a Green is we support change makers who are nurturers of people, place, and nature. And for those of you somewhere right here in Alameda Point, where those things come together and you see the balance of people and place and nature. It might be that you're working on another project or you're working somewhere else. Or for those of us joining virtually, you might be in an entirely different part of the state and thinking about how that resonates for you. So I just want us, as we're arriving here,
Hi, y'all.
to think about place.
How's it going?
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. I'm right here. So let's just take a few minutes to do that. And what comes up for you, whether you're here in the room or you're on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand. And that's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a reactions feature in some versions that has raise hand on it. There's also there might just be a hand. But what does that mean to you, Philip? Let's start off with you on Zoom. You can unmute yourself, please.
Good morning. Did I miss the question? Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, that's a good question. So we do work that support nurturing of people, places, and nature. And the question was, what does that evoke for you? What does that look like for you? What's a felt sense of that in your place or in another place that you've seen when we think about development and building community and supporting a place that integrates both people and nature? So that's the question, and you can think about that for a bit, and then we can see, are there other responses either on Zoom or here in the room? What does that look like? Yeah, please. And if you could say your name and just try to project, I'll translate for folks on the Zoom, but just say your name and try to project your voice as much as possible here in the room. That would be great.
Yeah, this is Phil. Just to respond to your question.
For me was open spaces, shared spaces.
Beautiful.
Typically our parks and things like that have green.
Yeah. Yeah. Integrating the green with the rest of the infrastructure. Beautiful, Sylvia. Thank you. So for folks on Zoom, just to repeat that, and you can put a thumbs up if you actually heard Sylvia, which would help us out about, knowing if the sound is coming through. Just quality parks and open space and having that integrated. Great. And Philip, I know, thanks for the thumbs up, and I know you were going to share, so please share with us.
Yeah, just briefly, our most recent experience has been with the Ashby Bart redevelopment proposal, where we're really trying to incorporate the interest and the recommendations of the community to restore a community that was bulldozed by Bart back in the 60s. And we're trying to build a community-friendly housing with retail space for local businesses, and also access to the farmers market, expanding access to farmers market, and maintaining a place for the flea market to continue operating.
Beautiful.
But and I'm on the board for Resources for Community Development, and we're going to be the nonprofit housing developer for that project.
Great, great. Thank you, Philip. Could everybody here in the room hear Philip? Okay, great. Awesome. I got thumbs up. Fabulous. And are there other reflections on what does that look like? The confluence of nurturing people, places, and nature. Anybody else have a vision? Yeah, Abby, please.
With the City of Alameda, I guess just most recently having my experience of picking my kids up from different summer camps all throughout the Bay Area
Mhm.
and going to these parks and open spaces, the Berkeley Marina, San Pablo Park, and seeing just hundreds of people of just complete, different walks of life, diversity, enjoying these spaces in different ways that benefit them. And just when I see these places being enjoyed with versatility, that really like hits home for me.
Beautiful. Thank you. And again, just testing on Zoom, seeing if I need to repeat here or if you could hear Abby on Zoom, if you want to just give a thumbs up as a reaction. Good. Thanks, Tracy. At least Tracy heard you, Abby. Great. So anything else, either on Zoom, if somebody wants to raise their hand, or here in the room, just a reflection from that wake up of what does it look like? Yeah, Sean.
I really appreciated what Sylvia said, as we, promote public spaces that could bridge across generations, bridge across place, how are you also being intentional about where those places are? Are they walkable to schools, to libraries, to equitable housing options? The walkability feature can often be secondary, and then you realize you have this beautiful asset that's 2 miles outside of town that get you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like ensuring that equitable design integrates across institutions.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Sean. Anybody else online want to share before we move on to talking about our day? You can raise your hand. You can just unmute. Always risky, but could work. Great. So you all have a sense of that for yourselves, and oftentimes we share the wake up, and oftentimes it's really just a moment of reflection so we can arrive here and not take you from where you were coming from right into a whole new experience, but make that transition gradual. And what you heard was a lot of what Build It Green, and I think what Alameda Point Collaborative are doing, and many of you and other partners in this work are, how is it that we are mindful and intentional about, and Sean, you spoke to it beautifully, how do you, yes, value open spaces and parks, but make sure those places are accessible. Make sure that the infrastructure around those places is supportive of people getting there, living there. And really looking at, what I've done some work in other places around the country, what we would call comprehensive community development. But what this is really a much larger level that we're talking about of integrating the way in which we do development, where we're not just building housing, but we're building housing in relationship to all these other pieces. And you'll hear a lot more about that today. So I want to introduce my cherished colleague and my co-facilitator today, Devaney Santos, who's going to walk us through a little bit of just an overview of what we're doing and where we're going. And then we'll be off and running. We'll do a little introductions here and on Zoom as well.
Hi everyone. I can do this. Alrighty, so can we get the next slide? Good morning, everyone. I want to name because I think it may be felt, but I also just want to say that I'm really grateful to have everyone here today in person and also on Zoom. This isn't particularly how we planned it, so we are going with the flow and whatnot in terms of it may be difficult for some people in the room to hear people on the computer. We hope to have speakers, but we want to just work with what we have here and also practice gratitude for us all being in the same space. So today, what we have for you, the purpose of us coming together today is to bring together those of you who are interested in systems change and regenerative development, and for Alameda Point to connect, learn, and discuss the potential of regenerative development moving forward here. We hope that by being here, we'll be able to have an opportunity to learn more about Alameda Point and the uniqueness of this community and this place. We hope to also have an understanding of the elements of regenerative development to help align around potential moving forward. And we'll be able to do that by hearing some of the speakers today. We also hope to have a set of interactive exercises that help build relationships between community-focused participants and organizations, agency representatives at city, regional, state, and federal levels, and business reps and other stakeholders, which we have here in the room and also online. And lastly, we hope to have a discussion of next steps and how we might move forward together and engage others. So we're going to have an opportunity for you all to get to know each other and introduce yourself to one another. But before we do that, have the next slide. I wanted to be able to introduce some agreements, but more so developmental guidelines on how we interact together. And so everything that we do with Build It Green, we hope to actually make it a developmental process, AKA we're not stuck in our ways. We're constantly trying to evolve and grow in the ways that we're thinking and functioning. And these are some agreements that we have between our team that we would like to offer to the space here today. So the first one is we resist mechanical thinking, and that's possibly the hardest one for all of us because when we start to learn something or when we start to observe information, we have ways that we already are accustomed to thinking, doing, and being. And when we notice that and we see ourselves automatically going into, like automatic mode or any mechanical thinking, we want to just pause and notice it and maybe disrupt that process in our own brains and how we're functioning. And that looks different for everyone, right? So just to keep that in mind as we interact with one another is when you find yourself in mechanical thinking, just notice it and try to disrupt it. Also look in the mirror because with that process, while that's going on inside of your head, other people may be noticing it as well. And so just to be self-reflective and self-aware of how we're showing up in every space that we're in together. We also want to test assumptions. So if we find ourselves assuming anything or jumping to what we think could be, noticing that as well. Engaging as equals. We all come from different walks of life and have different backgrounds, but we want to be able to respect one another as equal partners and players in everything that we do together. And this is especially important when you think about development because there is some sort of unspoken hierarchy there. And so also disrupting that process when you're seeing it come about. And then lastly, continually raising aspirations because we don't want to do anything basic, right? Like we want to constantly be raising the bar and whatnot for ourselves and for the work that we aspire to do. And that also looks different for everyone. So these are just some agreements that we would like to offer to you all as you get to know one another and as we get to talking more today. But now we will have some time, like 5 minutes for you to just get to know somebody that you don't know. So in the Zoom room, we'll put you in a breakout room and then in person, find somebody you don't know. Introduce yourself, tell people, like what you're looking forward to today, or just have casual conversation just about why you're here today. Yeah. And we'll be back in 5. All right, welcome back, everyone. If you could hear me, clap once. If you could hear me, clap twice. If you could hear me, clap 3 times. If you could hear me, please be quiet. All righty. So we will get started once again. But I wanted to give you a quick overview. Next slide. of what we're doing today. So we're going to have a welcome and overview from various speakers that have to do with Alameda Point and our executive director at Build It Green. Then we want to go into a regenerative development overview to talk about what is that and what does that even mean. We want to have some engagement around place and potential as it relates to Alameda Point or even wherever you're working. And then we'll have a large group discussion around next steps. So that will be our virtual or hybridish portion. We'll have lunch for 60 minutes and then we'll come back for those of you who are in person and we'll actually have a tour of Alameda Point for on-site participants in which we'll be on a shuttle bus together. And then we'll close back here. So that's our high-level agenda and what you can expect for today. But with that,
you who don't know it, and Abby and Gracia and Sylvia and a bunch of other people know this, but for those of you who don't, our beginnings came from the Base Closure Community Redevelopment and Homeless Assistance Act of 1994. That's a mouthful. Where bases that were closing were required to have a percentage of their space go to serving the needs of homeless individuals and families. And so that is how APC came to be. County people, city people, a bunch of other folks got together, and APC was born as a nonprofit so that we could actually apply for the services here, for the housing here. So that's the big part. Our mission to end homelessness by providing housing and services to create a community where formerly homeless families and individuals flourish and thrive. And so with that, there's various different pieces to what we do. We've got the affordable housing, clearly, where we partner with the city and the county and the federal government to make sure that it's safe and healthy. And then we have the supportive services. So equity is a word that's thrown around a lot. In order to have equity, you have to have the same types of opportunities for everybody. It's not that everybody gets the exact same thing because everyone's needs are different. And so we do our best to ensure that our services are equitable, that some folks who need more receive more, some folks who need less receive less. And so to that end, we offer a wide array of workforce development opportunities, case management and supportive services where we connect to resources and other needs in the community, education services. We have a youth center for our little kids, which we are revamping the curriculum so we can bring it back even stronger. And then we also have a teen drop-in space that we're working on. And these are really so families can have the various touch points that they need to be healthy and strong and get what they need so they can be part of the bigger community, right? We also have a farm and a nursery, which I'm excited to show you today. And those are spaces that are really at the heart of this type of regenerative work, where we offer workforce development opportunities at both of our social enterprises. There are also spaces where the broader community can come. So we're not trying to isolate the folks that we serve into these little pockets. We're trying to create a thriving environment where they're a part of the bigger whole. That's what APC is all about. And so this regenerative discussion today is critical to who we are. And with that, we see development where our farm and our nursery continue to thrive, continue to be part of the big picture here on the point, where we have all kinds of workforce development opportunities for everyone, not just our residents. So that's a little bit about today and the work that we do today. Although APC is in shift, as you know, I've been the executive director, for those of you I haven't met yet, for about 7 months. So it's exciting for all of us as I continue to learn in this wonderful opportunity. A little bit of housekeeping. Bathrooms are down this hall. There's a large men's bathroom and a smaller, just single bathroom. And if you keep going around the corner, there's also a larger women's bathroom. So those are there if you need anything. Cellular reception in this building is atrocious. You might want to go outside if there's an important call you have to take or something you have to do. And if you need anything else, please come get me. We're here to make you comfortable today. And thank you for being here again.
Okay, now we are going to hear from Councilmember Tracy Jensen, who is with us, and we're gonna just make her kind of be able to. Do you have Zoom up, Sam? Can you spotlight Tracy for us? Oh, you did. Okay, but here in the room. Like we gotta take down the slides. So we just have to pull the slide down that we're sharing and then have Tracy, we can see her up in the corner. Okay, great. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, everyone. How's it going there? Sorry I'm not there with you in person. Thanks, Odin and Build It Green, and thanks, Andrea and Alameda Point Collaborative. Really want to just start by saying your partnerships have been so important to improving the opportunities at Alameda Point. And I really appreciate that this convening is going to bring policymakers and community members and thoughtful people together to share ideas really about Alameda's future. As Odin mentioned, nurturing people, places, and nature is a goal for the future at Alameda Point. And I happen to be participating today from Boulder, Colorado. And this is a place that's kind of like Alameda. It reminds me of Alameda in some ways, where a community feels strongly about valuing accessibility, about an environmentally supportive community, and especially with regard to housing. So I'm really excited to welcome everyone today remotely, although and you all are at the site. The people who are there in person, you're all at the site where Alameda's built past, the past that was built intentionally with landfill at Alameda Point, and the opportunities, the developmental opportunities. You're at the site where those things converge. So I want to add a little bit about Alameda Naval Air Station. I think it's really a great opportunity to move forward, and again, appreciating the partnerships. But Alameda Naval Air Station was open for about 57 years. Let's see, 1940 to 1997. It closed in 97, so it's been closed for almost 30 years. And that's a long time. It's been closed, and there's still things that need to be done. And I'll just kind of end by sharing a little fact that it's somewhat troubling a little bit, I guess, to say that when the base did close in 1997, the Navy advised Alameda that it would be cleaned up. The Navy was going to finish the cleanup by 2021, right? Well, that has come and gone, and I think that with the types of meetings that we're having today, this type of convening and thoughtful development that's going on, especially things like ReShape and all of the contributions of Alameda Point Collaborative. I think even though 2021 has come and gone and we have a lot of work to do out there, I think that with the support from everyone who's here at this meeting and everyone in the community that cares about environmental sustainability, we can make it happen and make it happen for our future. So thank you all for being there, and I'm looking forward to learning more at the meeting.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah. And now her name has been mentioned a couple of times, but we're going to have Abby Thorne-Lyman come up and share a little bit about base reuse and the work that she's doing here.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited for this convening because, as I was saying to Xiomara in our little breakout, it's, you know, when you live and breathe this stuff as your day-to-day job and you get a paycheck for working on Alameda Point day in and day out, it is exciting to have others who are just passionate about equity and sustainability and development and growth and transportation come together and feed you their ideas. in 2014, the city adopted a new zoning plan, an EIR, and a master infrastructure plan for Alameda Point, which have really laid the foundation for the work that we've been doing. But as Councilmember Jensen mentioned, it's been over 25 years since the base has closed, and it can be very frustrating and daunting when you drive out around the base and you see what hasn't happened. I think it's also important to acknowledge what has happened. The city has entitled over 2,000 housing units. Yes, a lot of them haven't been built. We have some stalls, but also we've made just tremendous progress on so many things. We have Seaplane Lagoon Ferry Terminal. We do have new housing at the base. The ReShape project is moving forward. It's under construction. The site work is happening. The streets are being replaced. You can see the new backbone infrastructure coming in. So there have been a lot of wins, but it is a challenge when you have, we're in a situation where there is an adopted plan. There's been an adopted plan for over a decade, and we are the holders of that plan, and it is our job to continue to implement the plan and keeping that momentum, keeping that energy alive, bringing in the new ideas of, what's changed in the last decade, what's changed in the last 25 years that we need to be incorporating is just so important. And I think today is an opportunity to really do that and revisit and rethink that. And I just did want to make sure we all kind of are working from a similar context, because some folks here may be deeply familiar with Alameda Point, much more so than me, and other folks, Alameda might be a new place for you. And so I just did want to lay a little bit of groundwork. We're sitting here in the center of the Bay, literally, right? The center of the Bay Area, the center of the Bay. And it is a tremendous opportunity for growth in one of the most, and one of the richest economies in the world. And what is the opportunity? How can we leverage that opportunity in such a great place? But there are just so many layers of consideration and tension here. How are we growing this place into a transit-rich, sustainable hub when West Alameda has one road on and off the island, and Alameda Point has one bus line that runs every 45 minutes today, and two ferry stops? But our vision is to grow this into a transit-oriented development. And so we have this tension of, we want the development, we don't have the transit, and how are we curating that? How are we centering housing and job growth on an island that is experiencing sea level rise and tsunami warnings, right? There's the vulnerability piece to this, and I do want to acknowledge Danielle Mueller who oversees the city's climate adaptation and resiliency plan and sustainability work is here. We are very conscientious about the risks of sea level rise and the need to prepare for them as we are doing this growth work. And then also, how are we allowing for equity and equitable opportunities, and affordable housing and affordable space for jobs and workforce development in a space where we have roughly $1 million of infrastructure to replace in the ground? So the city's big strategy in developing has been to leverage the value of the land to entice developers to replace the backbone infrastructure, the outdated stormwater and sewer and streets, and water lines and electricity. And that's really, the city is not intending to make any money from this. The city is intending to create a place that has sustainable infrastructure. And that is just a real tension, because the city's mantra for Alameda Point has been that this area is fiscally neutral to the rest of the city. It's supposed to pay for itself. And I think the question is, can it do that? And can it be all the things that it needs to be from an equity perspective? So just to give a little orientation to you'll see Alameda Point this afternoon, but I just do want to lay out a little bit of groundwork here of the strategy we have going. There are 3 core areas of Alameda Point. So we are sitting in the historic reuse area. This is an historic district, and we are looking to adaptively reuse these buildings. There will be some small scale infill development where we're sitting right now, but that's one area. That's why you see a lot of leased hangars and a lot of vacant buildings, frankly, because adaptive reuse is hard. We have our master planned residential development area where we have entitled those 2,000 units, and that's where ReShape is, and that's where the Alameda Point Collaborative housing is. And that's where we're looking to really grow the number of housing units that we have in Alameda Point. And then further south, we have what we call the Enterprise District, which was envisioned as the jobs-rich master development area, which really, we have some amazing employers, incredible maritime industry at Alameda Point. People really take advantage of the water access here. And maritime jobs are great because they are middle scale, middle income jobs. You can get these jobs without a college degree and they pay pretty well. But we need more. We need to grow. And so those are kind of the three areas. And then we continually, my focus as the base reuse director is on the master infrastructure plan. So we are having our master developers we're building our new infrastructure east to west. So we're on the west side of Alameda Point. And so that we can connect the water loops, we can connect the sewer, we can connect the electricity. And so we're also selling land east to west. And that's a key part of our strategy is we're not trying to take on the full 700 or 800 acres at once, but we're incrementally working east to west. And that's really important as well. And then I think the last thing I just want to end on is taking those commitments from 25, 30 years ago, the commitments that the federal government made and our partnership with both Alameda Point Collaborative and our other collaborating partners and the other nonprofits. Teal from the Food Bank is here. And really elevating those. When the base closed, the city lost 14,000 jobs, and the commitment and the vision that was made was to replace those jobs. And that seemed very basic and simple, but I think we all know that today, to create a sustainable economy, what we actually need is more housing. So I think it's important to acknowledge these shifts in perspective of what's important. The commitment and the promise from the federal government was we're going to give this land back to the city because of this severe job loss you've experienced. But now I think we all know that what's our opportunity and our need has very much shifted. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today and to really elaborating on that. What has shifted and what do we need to shift in this plan? So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Abby. And we have one more speaker, our BIG's executive director, Jeremy Madsen, who's going to go over a little bit of the work that we do and the history of our engagement here in Alameda. And then we're going to open it up for a little more reflection, both on the Zoom and here in the room. And we'll do that until about 11:30, where we have a break and the Zoom portion formally ends. But if there are folks on Zoom who want to stick around, we'll keep that going until we break for lunch a little after noon. So, Jeremy, please.
All right. So again, I'm Jeremy Madsen. I'm the executive director of Build a Green. I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about the organization, as Odin said, the engagement at Alameda Point, but also how the work that we've crafted with the city and with APC, how it's different from some of the other things that some of you may have participated in. Before I do that, though, I want to, we've had some chances to like talk a little bit one-on-one. We're going to have some, interactive part later, but I want us to know each other as a group a little bit better. So quick questions. Don't overthink these questions. Just like raise your hand when, kind of it calls to you to do so. How many here are in one way or another associated with the city of Alameda? You're a resident, you work for the city. How many people, both on the Zoom, like raise hands, raise real hands, fake hands, whatever. Okay, there's a few. I'm raising my hand on that. I live about a mile away, which is awesome. This is like my playground and exploring area. How many are involved in one way or another in the kind of work that Alameda Point Collaborative does? Housing, homeless services. Okay, again, good mix here. Who's involved in like kind of environmental issues? How a place like Alameda Point is impacted by and impacts the environment. So yeah, again, good number of hands. Who is here Abby's going to raise her hand on this one. Who's here involved in real estate development? You're a builder, a developer, an architect. You actually make this stuff happen. So kind of on my hand. Anything else? Workforce development. Like you're just really curious to be here. All right. And I think, I hope I'm going to see what I think I'm going to see. How many of you care about and work on multiple of those things? All right. So that's the point that I'm trying to get to. These issues are all interwoven. And because they are interwoven, we can't address them in isolation. a couple for I would say maybe provocative things I'll say here. I don't think we have a climate crisis in Alameda. I don't think we have a housing and homelessness crisis. I don't think we have a job and economic development and fiscal neutrality, challenge. I think all those things are different pieces of the same thing. And I think every community is kind of in the same situation. They're different community to community, but it's always these interwoven issues that have to be addressed in a unique way. And I want to think for a second, what happens when we don't address these things holistically? I think at the very least, we miss opportunities to make impacts in a way that align across different priorities. But I think something happens to us as people. And I think in Alameda, in the Bay Area, in California, at our essence, we are carrying innovative people who believe we can and we should have prosperity, we should have joy, and we should achieve that in a way that nurtures the human and natural worlds in which we are a part. And I think every time that we submit to the idea that we have to make environmental sacrifices to provide for, say, dignified housing for everyone, or every time an economic opportunity, an environmental opportunity, and environmental stewardship are deemed not compatible, or when we say that we can't have a holistic community where those who have been gifted with privilege can live side by side with those who have been on the margins, and that we're better because of that. Every time we make one of these trade-offs without exploring every possible alternative, we fail to live up to that caring, innovative, principled essence of who we are. Sam, can you go back a slide, please? So I want to now, kind of transition into this. What is the purpose of Build It Green? So we help change makers who are focused on the places that we live. So those are homes and neighborhoods. People like all of you live up to this essence. That's what's up on the screen there. And we do this through kind of three areas of work. So Sam, can you go to the next one? First, we work directly with community stakeholders, like folks here at Alameda Point. We enable them to articulate, aspirations they have for their neighborhoods around equity and affordability, environmental vitality, prosperity. And we always start by working with the most, the most vulnerable voices in a community. We want to ensure that their aspirations carry as much weight as anybody else's. Then second, we work with residential developers and builders and architects, and we help them develop new perspectives, new thinking skills that allows them to move from doing something to communities, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but doing something to communities, to being this, phrase that you've heard a few times here, nurturers of people, places, and nature, and putting them in a position to work with change makers at the community level, like folks here at Alameda Point. And then third, we have this cool program that some of you have been a part of called our Innovators Network. That's a network that brings the community change makers, the place-oriented people, professionals, and others together to build relationships, to build trust, and to work together to achieve these aspirations that we've been talking about. And get to, I like the way that Abby was talking about, not just the aspiration, but the how. How do we actually make that happen? So I'm super proud of what we do. I think we're the only organization in California that has this kind of relationship with both community-based leaders and also the building and development professionals to really, again, make communities and neighborhoods truly thrive. So let's talk now about the work that we're actually aspire to see happen here at Alameda Point. So it started about a year ago. Abby and I got together at Firebrand, the bakery just around the corner. And then separately, I met with Doug Biggs, who former executive director here at APC. And I shared this idea that, we would be interested in working with the community here at Alameda Point to surface a really holistic, aspirational image for what could be the future here. And I was super thrilled because these conversations happened over 2 days, and both of them were like, that sounds fun. Let's do that. And so, we were off and going. And this was at a time, this is pre-January 2025. The federal government was actually invested in promoting work like this. So we all got together, big APC, the Base Reuse Department, a few other partners. We wrote a funding proposal to the US EPA. That proposal, can we go to the next slide? Had 3 phases to it. One is that the first phase is envisioned, getting a group of APC residents and other residents here at the point together to learn from them and with them about interwoven issues like housing and flooding and sea level rise, transportation, and how all the growth and development that's happening around this former base might actually impact them. And in that learning process, we would share with them, new thinking techniques, new perspectives to make sure that we are, again, approaching these issues in that interwoven, holistic way that I talked about earlier. Second phase, a lot like the first, but we'd bring in city leaders, staff, other kind of key stakeholders in the community and go through that kind of same process, but with the residents of APC and other residents from Alameda Point kind of in the lead and actually doing some of that, kind of education and training. And again, kind of putting the people who are most affected, like right at the center. And then the third phase is the fun phase. We would have built those new thinking skills. We will have built those perspectives. We will have built issue knowledge that is shared among everybody that was involved. And together, we would come up with a kind of an implementation plan, action plan and implementation plan, and move that forward, the how, as Abby was talking about, and, make these co-created aspirations for Alameda Point a reality. So that was the idea. We were excited about it. We asked for $2.7 million from the federal government over 3 years, which we thought was an amount that could ensure success. Proposal went in November 2024. So get a sense of where I'm going here. Really quick question. Anybody have any idea what happened? Nothing happened. Nothing at all. We did not get a yes. We did not get a no. Instead of, I think we all know, the federal government was going through a process of systematically dismantling everything around social equity, climate, environmental justice, all the things that are the underpinnings of what this project was all about. But despite, DC going from a partner to a barrier, we at Build a Green, we're still super interested in trying to move this forward. And we were super excited that the city, especially through Abby's department, APC, we're interested in being there together with us. Also, Danielle's here, so very excited that Danielle said, here's a little bit of funding that we can go find and help us apply for a grant so we can have actually this conversation and keep us moving forward. So today, what we're really doing is we're inviting you to be champions of this project, this idea as well, and to help us think about how to move it forward, whether we do that quickly or slowly, whether we do that with $2.7 million or a fraction of that, or a whole lot more. We'll see what we can do. Try to move this forward. And like I said, I wanted to, as I wrap up, emphasize what I think makes this work that we're proposing different than some of the other things that might have happened here in the community over time or happen in other places that you work. The first is this project is really focused on these interwoven issues and holistic approaches. Again, we try to really avoid that siren song of trade-offs and instead look for real synergies. Second, it's about aspiration and potential. I want you to notice as I've talked here, there are 2 words that I never used. I never used the word problem. I never used the word solution. We want to get beyond fixing things. It's all about aspirations, meeting the potential of a place and the people in that place and the nature that place is part of. Third, it's all about new ways of thinking too. And we're going to hear a little bit of this from Odin and Devaney, and you guys are going to have a chance to play with that a bit. If we want to break old habits, if we want to do things differently, we have to actually learn to think differently. And that's a big part of this work. And then finally, it's about champions and collaborators. We're not here to tell you anything. This project has not been envisioned to necessarily teach anything in particular. It is about discovery, and it's about discovery of what we can do together for a place and a people. And I think I want to close on that final point, and I hope that, you know, when we're done here today, you're going to want to be part of this effort to discover more about Alameda Point, discover more about its potential, and pursue that together. And I'm going to turn it over to Devaney now because Odin's talking to Sam. Thank you.
Hello, Zoom people. Can we get the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so we've heard a lot about what's going on around Alameda Point, and I'm sure if you're not connected directly to Alameda Point, you can have some sort of affinity or understanding of what is needed here. But something that we like to use at Build It Green is a framework called the Law of Three, and we generally don't just introduce frameworks. We usually try to introduce, you know, like the thought process behind it first, but due to time, I'm just gonna give you a sneak peek. And it's not that special. I think that's something to know as well, is we think like this all the time, but the reason why frameworks and ways of thinking and all of that sort of stuff is important is because it brings us back when we do run into mechanical thinking, and it gives us a reminder and a guidebook of how to actually get out of the ways that we're thinking in order to do something about it. So we've heard a lot about activating forces. So what is it that we need? What are the things that we need? What are the things that we want? We've also heard a lot about restraining forces. Why can't we get there? You know, they're literally bumping heads, whether it's funding, whether it's staffing, whether it's government problems. There's a lot of things that keep us from getting the things that we want. And you could also think about this just in your personal life. There's like a lot of things that we want for ourselves that we're just unable to get because, you know, there's something restraining us here. And so what we want to think about is, where is the middle path in between those two? What is the reconciling force? So next slide. What we're wanting to think about is, how do we handle conflicts and change as creative forces? And how do we meet the moment with opportunities that produce new and innovative outcomes, given what's being activated here, what's being restrained? How do we actually find something that's reconciling between the two, that is not in the realms of, you know, dream world or like it's impossible, but something that actually meets the moment of both of the things that are true. So I don't know if you've heard people say this before, but I very much believe that two things can exist at the same time. And our goal here, as we talk about Alameda Point, or even the things that we're working on in our personal professional lives that have nothing to do with Alameda Point, we're wanting to see how can we actually reconcile those things to meet the moment. So Odin will lead us through some questions and some discussion, and we'll have an opportunity to talk more about what that could look like here.
So I want to encourage us before we go into discussion to just reflect on what this looks like for the work that you do. And you have heard people who are here at Alameda Point Collaborative, or Tracy working with on the city council, Abby's work as the base reuse director and doing work on this whole combination of issues. And what we tend to do is we sort of wear the same grooves in our brain and in our bodies. And it's really hard to think about, well, you know, how could this work differently? How could we structure this differently? And that's what we want to push against a little bit. So as we're having this next conversation, I also want to remind you of some of our guidelines around our work here together today, whether you're here in the room or joining us virtually, about how do we resist mechanical thinking? How do we step out of the ways that we've already seen this and look at new possibilities as something that, you know, can be as destructive and creative as a wave, or as, you know, altering as a tree falling or dying in a forest, but then being transformed and feeding the system in some other way. So, and there might be other metaphors that you use in your work and other ways in which you might feel this. So I wanted to share a little bit in that vein of, you know, something that's pretty traditional in terms of how we've started, and then move toward thinking about how we do this in another way. But I wanted to open the question though about, are there things that have occurred to you in your work, whether you're on the Zoom and you can raise a hand, or whether you're here in the room, that you found have worked differently because you approached the issue from a different perspective? So just getting voices in the room, like what do you feel like, whether it's now or whether it's some point in the past, where did you experience a departure from business as usual and it helped you see things in an entirely different way and do things in an entirely different way? Folks have examples of that? Yeah, please. Can you share your name? Yeah.
I'm a general
Thanks.
contractor based here in Alameda.
Thanks, Bob.
Some years ago, I'd say late eighties, early nineties, I had an associate who was an architect named Ron C. Who, after his retirement from UC Berkeley, became head of the planning board here in Alameda. And it was right around the time that the base was being turned over from the Navy to, I guess, the city of Alameda at the time. And they had a group called the ERAG, Base Organization Something Group.
It's a good acronym.
Of course, all of the developers were dying to get their hands on this land. Many big real estate interests wanted to come right in, start building both housing and fairly large commercial stuff. But my friend Ron and some of his associates at the time decided, let's slow this thing down, take a look at the big picture. And they came up with, for what he told me was about a 50-year plan that involved a lot of open space, housing primarily, light commercial, sort of keep it more small scale with a lot of space that was usable to all the residents and visitors. That thing's got kind of slowed down by a little bird called the least tern that was nesting on the runways and all that. And, you know, delays, probably some politically oriented. I was really proud of them at the time because they had some vision. And if it hadn't been for people like that, this whole part of the island may have been built up already.
Yeah.
With a bunch of commercial stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they passed it on to the next groups to get involved with sustaining their ideas
Yeah.
and doing
That's
the
great.
right thing.
That's great. Thank you, Bob, for that. And I think that's a really illustrative story of, I mean, particularly the part of going slow. And
Yeah.
we're working, and starting to partner here, but we're also working, Deb, I'm going to call you out. I mean, we're working in South Berkeley also. And, that's a whole part of the process in any community or with any project is we're usually very quick to like, let's go, let's create change. And sometimes the best thing to do is to slow down, is to step back and look at the bigger picture. So that's a great story of right here. That's a beautiful illustration of, and sometimes, the endangered species are important and they slow us down as well. So it doesn't only come from us humans. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a really important framing for how we do this kind of work.
I've been born and raised in San Francisco. I've always felt that this area is special in the regards that we take everything into consideration.
Yeah.
We look at the small things.
Yeah.
And plan it.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Any other reflections or stories, either folks who are with us virtually or here in the room, about projects, experiences, turning points in careers or education that sort of illustrate this? Like, how do we see kind of what might feel like a bottleneck or a conflict as potential? Carlos, and then we'll come back there.
Yeah, I think having worked in the institutions of government, and also as a developer, it's been useful for me to step out of those institutions, to see the values that come forth from there, which oftentimes are things like efficiency, value being defined as certain ways that may not be amenable to allowing of new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think trying to step out of that sort of frame of thinking as a person and institution
Mm-hmm.
is useful, and figuring out how to get different ways of perceiving value generation, including training people to get in the mix
Yeah.
without such deep pockets, for example.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Please.
It was obviously a huge win, especially for food banks. What we saw was that we physically had to create space, and we had to reinvest in the way that we distributed food. We started pre-packing items instead of letting people families to make choices for themselves. But then we also saw this exponential growth. And so as a small organization here in Alameda, we really able to step up from this vacuum and do so much more than I think the organization had ever imagined that we might be able to accomplish. And so with the information, I think the organization was really able to better understand what we were capable of.
Yeah.
So then coming out of COVID, we were able to kind of completely the values that we established. And it really informed the way that we now under construction here at the state. So it really informed that new space, the physical space. And I don't think so if we had gone through that really challenged.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. And this is happening at all levels. Like, these stories are great. And you also heard from Jeremy and from Abby and from Tracy and from Andrea about how on an organizational level, a citywide level, or more regionally, statewide, even larger, what does it look like to be transformative in affecting the transition that we're going through right now, whether we like it or not? Pandemics, sea level rise, economic challenges, wealth and racial and social inequality. So what is required for us to move into this kind of work? And there are folks who are here who we've heard from who do this day in and day out, but in engaging this larger group. So I want to actually explore, before we take a little bit of a break, and we'll allow folks on Zoom to either move on with their day, or you can stick around and we'll take a little break for about 10 minutes before we continue the conversation. But I wanted to share particularly, Jeremy talked about the fact that, the federal government is actively and intentionally divesting themselves of community and regional support in the ways that perhaps many of us see that government, whatever level it's at, should be doing. And so we need to then step in, and we don't want to be daunted by the fact that we were put in, a position where, hey, this, grant went out there. There's a lot of possibility here, but now that opportunity has closed off. What are the opportunities that are now opening up? And so I just wanted to share, if we can move on to the next slide, however pretty those are. Actually, go down a couple more. These are for later. Sorry, I thought I reorganized it. Okay, one more. Okay, so just to get very practical and, open us up to opportunities, there's some potential project funding that's out there beyond what we had hoped for. And in addition to funding, we want to think about the other opportunities that you know of, the work that you're doing that could come together to really support what's happening already here in Alameda Point and bring in this, potential sort of regenerative frame in doing that. So if we can click through here. So the EPA Brownfields program, to what extent, Jeremy, is that still like an option, like a thing on the table?
You want me to get up and speak to this?
Yeah, this would be great. Yeah.
So, in leading up to this convening, we had a number of interviews with folks who are at the state level, nonprofits, kind of regional players, private foundations, et cetera. And we're like, basically talking to them about interest in engaging. And the question always came up of like, well, where's the money going to come from if we're going to do this? So what this list is in total is a bunch of ideas that were not just surfaced by us, but were surfaced by others. So so for example, just starting with that first one, the Center for Creative Land Recycling pointed out that as much as EPA is divesting themselves from any number of things that are like aligned with where we are. One program that is continuing is the EPA Brownfields program, and there might be grant programs within that that could be applicable to what we're doing here. I'm not going to go through all of these, but state level, our Strategic Growth Council folks have said, "Hey, you guys might actually be really perfectly set up for." Transformative Climate Communities grant and/or Climate Resilience Center grant. They're going through a process of just getting that funding stream for the next round kind of up and running. It's going to be a review process of the actual program starting in September. But there's also kind of regional opportunities. There's foundations. There's the opportunity to work into, if there's like an actual infrastructure funding to raise millions and hundreds of millions of dollars for actual infrastructure on the ground. Is there a community engagement component that could allow for some of this work to happen? And there's also like other ideas. Again, this is not a full comprehensive list of what we heard from other folks, but a good smattering. And there's other things out there. And I think, Odin alluded to it. There is this sort of support, which is definitely going to be needed to do this work. But there's a myriad of other ways beyond the financial that folks can be a partner and a champion for this work. So just wanted to kind of share that is out there.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. So we want to get more of these, your ideas is you here in the room and on the Zoom, and would love to talk about in this new frame. It's not just about, and I know it's sort of like a sudden pivot to talking about, well, how do we get this done? But we're in a phase where we really want to get things done while at the same time taking into consideration, the story, Bob, that you shared, and Carlos, what you shared, and, Teal, this idea of like, how do we respond to these massive shifts that are happening in our society, but still move things forward? And I'm just wondering what ideas are here in the room, or for folks who are still on with us virtually. What are thoughts that come up when you think about how do we approach either funding or other kinds of resourcing in a different way, with this lens of regeneration, of thinking in a whole systems perspective? So the floor is open. Yeah, Carlos, we can come back to you. If you're online and you want to raise your hand and share something, please do that. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, my instinct is what value can we create here before we feel the need to go to government funding?
Yeah.
Like one example is there's this technology being created out of Sweden for digital energy distribution, getting away from the lines. Very efficient. It's an on-demand system, and have this runway with massive solar powers, solar panels, sell the energy back to ourselves at a slight markup. Maybe for private companies, you would charge more. For low income, we charge less. It starts to create a rate structure that's more progressive than our current energy rate structure. So that's just one idea. Also, kind of retail can we create, and what kind of rent can we charge to create our own revenue, and then build on that with other grants.
Great. Thank you. And I want folks, because it's just to notice now the mechanical thinking that can kick in of like, oh no, like that's not what we're doing at all, or that won't work here. And so let's just we only have a little bit of time together. Let's just, kind of be in this space of what if and why not, and see what ideas float up, even if they're coming from folks who are not as steeped in the work as you might be. So just an encouragement there. So other ideas from folks, anyone on Zoom joining us virtually, who wants to share a perspective or possibility here? Okay, I'm keeping my eye on the Zoom and also seeing if there's folks here. Yes, please.
Well, I'm with the Strategic Growth Council, so obviously an advocate for TCC and CRC. But also I noticed that, private capital isn't really on this list. And I think like, as we're talking about these intersecting crises, government won't be able to fund all of these things through grants, I think. And so I think, I don't know, getting creative about how we can leverage private capital. And I think we were kind of talking about virtual power plants, which I think is a really kind of an interesting format for energy as opposed to our traditional utility structure, which can have some, issues, particularly as they pertain to certain inequalities, as we're seeing energy rates going up and up and up. And so something like that, where it's both kind of community centric, but also it's pulling in all of this private capital. And I don't know, I think like creative ways to do that without giving away community control.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Mel. And I think that, you're going beyond this, but it's like, how do we get, as development is happening, how do we build the community piece into that investment, wherever it's coming from? And then how do we build a sort of a slowing down, like Bob was talking about, in a different way of thinking? And how does that work in terms of how traditionally we see numbers for development penciling out and actually working? So great. Others, I'm coming back to the Zoom, checking if there's anybody here who'd like to share anything. Still seeing no raised hands. Yeah, please. And then Sean, I'll come to you next.
Michelle, kind of a question emerges for me in thinking around some of the regional opportunities. So, and that TC up there prompted it for me. So as part of the Link 21 program, this idea there's another crossing through the bay. So likely in Alameda.
Yep.
West End. So thinking about the MTC's transit oriented communities program, kind of thinking of zooming out beyond just this little section, but like the whole West End and the Bay, thinking what are the other kind of regional plans that we'd be able to think into, and that could be funding opportunities or collaboration opportunities.
Great. That beautiful. Great idea. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah. Sean, please.
I love what you shared for a couple different reasons, but I would add a sub bullet under foundations to think about what could be an integrated capital strategy. Thinking what are the foundations in the Bay or the statewide level, the endowment, Irvine Foundation, Cal Wellness. A lot of them look at, we align our impact investing strategy with asset managers, asset holders, and looking at impact first investments. That integrated capital strategy is pairing unrestricted grant dollars with long-term impact first patient capital to achieve the goals of the developers, achieve the goals of the community, and still take community-directed lens over a very long time horizon. And there are foundations looking at that strategically. There's impact capital firms that advise foundations. I think looking at that from an ecosystem approach, you can set up interviews and meetings to learn how those foundations are working, how it would align with broader goals here at Hyperloop.
Yeah. Wow. Love it. Thank you. Here.
Yeah, my name's Seth. I'm hearing some things about transportation. Like, I think what's so interesting about is the space that's available, the runways that are available.
Yeah.
How close proximity that open space is to density. What sort of opportunities that might create, whether unique transportation models or to Barton that might create in the future, personal drone transportation opportunities. There could be some interesting things that are coming down the line.
Absolutely.
Private development capital.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that complements what Michelle was sharing. And I know when Abby was talking, and Abby's history in transit-oriented development, we worked together years ago. I could feel the heartbreak in your voice.
Oh no.
Of like, oh my God, there's only like one line that runs every 45 minutes. Like, so there's so much opportunity there. Sylvia, did you have something? Yes.
Yeah, maybe we're not talking about them yet. See that I brought up is we're a land of so I'm sure they know. The TTSC, which is the Department of Toxic Substance Control, their process. I don't think they're going away and soon. And responding to them on. So they're both a partner because they are developed physically.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the
Mm-hmm.
do the work, they can help you. As we actually get on the other end of the island. That we're doing for the housing project, but it has a very robust community outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So that then you get that kind of solution. They have a very high standard of how, higher than most groups, but how they really want the land cleaned up, which is beyond just costly. So it really has a very holistic approach. I think lines of what we're doing. Source for a lot of people want to do this.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. Just coming back to folks online, any comments or ideas or questions that folks want to pose there? Okay. Anything else here in the room? Comments, questions? Yeah, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gracia. I'm with City of Alameda Housing and Human Services. I heard a couple of times the term equity and racial equity come up. That is another piece of there is funding out there for that as well. I think it would apply because here in West Alameda, as in comparison to the rest of the island, and it is an equity issue that they don't have the same infrastructure and amenities as the rest of the island.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great. I don't know, not the word argument, but a great ask in terms of this is an equity issue and this would build.
Yes.
If you were to apply for funding related to that, I know the San Francisco Foundation.
Yeah. Thank you, Gracia. Yeah, very, very important. Central to what it is that we want to do. Anything else? All right. So which is perfect because we're right on time. We've been sitting together here, hearing from each other, hearing from other folks. Thank you to all the folks on Zoom who are still with us. And we're gonna take a 10-minute break here just to stretch the legs. Again, bathrooms are down that way. That's pretty well signed, so you can find the men's room and then an individual just single bathroom. And then if you go around the corners to the left and left again, follow the signs, you'll find the women's room. Folks who are on Zoom, officially we were going to conclude now, but we are going to be back in here for about 20-25 minutes before lunch to continue the conversation. If you'd like to take a break and then rejoin us, we will leave this Zoom open. And then we'll have lunch a little bit after noon. It should arrive, and that'll be upstairs, and we'll direct you to that after we're back in here in the room. So 10-minute break, back here at 11:40, about another 20 to 30 minutes of interactive conversation. And then this afternoon at 1 here in great organizations like Alameda Point Collaborative, the work that Abby and others at the city are doing. So those partnerships are happening. I'm curious as well about if we look at sort of another larger system framework, and I know Devaney said we don't tend to just drop people into frameworks, but if we could, Sam, if we could reverse from this back to that one. Yeah. This is a regenerative framework called the Seeing Potential Framework. And the idea is, and this might be familiar, I've been facilitating for years, and this is very much like kind of the way I see something from as simple as a meeting to an entire project, or thinking about a community or an even larger vision for what something could be, is that we think about sort of the whole system and the effects that, if we're looking for systemic change, we want to see in the system. And then what are the outcomes that will lead us to those effects? So what are the particular results that want to happen in the system that we want to produce? And then what are the outputs that we're creating to get us to those outcomes? What are we actually doing? You know, building housing, kind of developing more integrated land use plans, creating a different kind of a culture which leads to cultural change on a broader level. And then I think at the core, and what we often start with after we think about effects, is what do we need on the ground to make that happen? And that's where a lot of this conversation about funding and partnerships starts coming in, but also about our individual capabilities. Like, do we, and not from a deficit perspective, but from a how are we growing into developing our own capabilities to be able to work as part of an institution or an agency or a community to be able to be part of making those effects happen. So with this as a frame, we can go to the next slide. You know, what is it that is sort of unfurling here? So I'm curious for people to just ponder, and this could be, you know, we're being very specific in terms of this whole proposal we put together, working here in Alameda Point, and folks, all of you who are here, but this could apply to any place. And I mentioned Deb earlier, who's here from Healthy Black Families, who's a close partner of ours in South Berkeley, and we hosted many of you, several of you were at our gathering in Berkeley in early June. And this is the same process that they've gone through quite organically as well, and that they're going through. This can happen in any place. It's like, what is it that we want to see? What is it that ultimately needs to change in terms of the way the system is working now and the way that we hope that it would work at its greatest potential? And then what are the outcomes? What are the outputs? And then where do we need to evolve to make the work evolve? So I'm just wondering, for this place or for your own place, what are thoughts that you have here on, you know, that broader sense of an effect? What changes in the system? If you can think about, you know, the way that things are happening now, and ideally how you might hope that they are happening. What's the change that you see? If you even do a little, like, briefly close your eyes and just, what's the first image that comes to mind of a changed system that represents an effect here? And I'm looking at, I'm sorry to be turned away from the Zoom, but you can put ideas in the chat, or you can raise your hand for those of you still on the Zoom, or just anything here. And it could already be just woven into your work. It could be at the tip of your tongue, but I'm curious how you would express that for Alameda Point and Alameda, or more broadly, or in other places. Yeah.
I don't want to dominate the conversation.
No, you're not. You spoke earlier, but you haven't even said, yeah, much since. So please.
Yeah, so this is Abby again for the Zoom folks, but Danielle and I were talking on the break, and you know, there's a lot of incredibly good and impactful changes happening here. This place is so large, right? This is not 11 acres at Ashby Park. This is 700 acres, right? There's a lot of disparate work that is happening that is all moving in the right trajectory. Pulling it all together, having an ongoing mechanism for engaging with folks when there is already a plan, and you know, like you know, Teal's building a new food bank, right? And the ReShape project is under construction, and Danielle's doing climate adaptation work and trying to identify ways, you know, to address sea level rise. And all of these different pieces are happening, but the cohesive story,
yeah,
path we're on, it is a really hard story to tell.
Yeah.
And because it is a really hard story to tell, like we've talked about these state and regional sources, and you know, those require visibility and an understanding by the larger regional community,
yeah,
of what's possible here and what's happening.
Yeah.
And getting visibility.
Yeah.
But when we have, you know, hey, we've got these 15 amazing things happening, but the story is not being told about the cohesive story of what those 15 things is.
Yeah.
And the community not having a regular opportunity to engage and see that big picture. Like I see it because I live it every day, and I've had 2 years to learn it.
Right.
how do we tell that story? How do we allow people to be part of the story? And how do we get people to support and care about the story at a bigger level so that we can bring funding?
Yeah. That's so great. And Abby, it illustrates sort of, this picture here, which is this sort of version of the seeing potential framework in nature, in life, is that we're not just focused on, the part of the fern that's unfurling, it's the entire plant. And so what you just spoke to actually integrates all of these, right? It's like, oh, the vision is like this cohesive, like there, it's out there, and how do we describe it? And then that comes all the way back down to capabilities of like, what are our sort of individual skills and collective skills in being able to put that out there to then, nourish and feed this amazing initiative that we're working. Thank you for sharing that, Jeremy.
People who spoke are not. So I just want to build on what Abby said and reflect on that a bit. I think that's exactly right. And I think that idea that there's a lot going on here, and it does add up to a whole that's more than the sum of its parts. And I think part of this like effect thing that we're talking about is to actually be able to literally see that. And as you were saying, Abby, I think having a group of people who can actually have an image, and that's the term we use at Build a Green. We, instead of saying visioning, we say imaging. And so, by visioning, I think we sometimes get to the point of like, ideal world, it would look like X, Y, and Z, and almost it's kind of like utopian thing. Whereas like an imaging process is meant to be like, let's look at really how these different pieces would fit together and see how they work together, and also see how they might break down. And so we can kind of address all of that. And so I think, having some ability, which is actually really interesting to point out, Abby, that it's not here right now, to hold all those pieces together and have that image. That's it's a great missing piece to be able to like to surface.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts on this thread or other things that that folks are wanting to share about what you see in this place or in other places? Danielle, please.
Build a little bit on Abby and Jeremy. I think that the visibility piece is so important that Abby was describing. And if we as a group can help inspire the imagination leaders across the region and others to see the example of how we're putting into practice with really incredible vision here at Alameda Point for a community that's going to be really thriving and equitable and transit oriented and access to nature and the water, these pieces coming together. And I think that opportunities will be able to that we're seeing barriers now, but I think if we can let a story and elevate this place a little bit, we may be able to some opportunities we're seeing. Because we are meeting a lot of the California housing goals and transit goals and our climate goals, and we're addressing sea level rise in a really innovative way. We could really serve as a test bed.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thanks, Danielle. Other thoughts along these lines? Yeah, Seth.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing a lot of like just a lot of the initiatives that are being put out and like all these outputs that seem to be coming from the capabilities. And I'm curious, the next level up, what that outcome, like, is there like some cohesive outcome or message or stance of what is that outcome? Because I just coming in new, I'm having a hard time together, and the people that know, you have a sense of what that is.
Yeah, great question. And again, extra credit, gold star for actually using the model that you mentioned. So thoughts on that? Like, what's that sort of intermediate? Because that's sometimes difficult because an outcome it's the result. It's not the entire image or vision or effect, but it's sort of what leads you there and what is demonstrably different because you've done all these things leading up to it. So anybody who's involved here, or there could also be from another place in the Bay Area or in California or anywhere else you want to reference, like what's an outcome look like? And I think your question was specific to here, but I also think it's illustrative of other places as well.
I just,
Abby?
what I would say is we work from a very real estate driven model, right? We're working within acknowledging my own constraints and working within what's feasible in the pro forma, right? And working with, and I think it just goes back to the very beginning of this, of thinking beyond that. And I think the outcome would be finding a way to not be bound by the practicalities of a pro forma, and you know, the dauntingness of $1 billion of infrastructure, and not constraining our equity potential because there's no way a developer can pencil it. And you know, just getting past that, and seeing those, you know, those grant opportunities and those other opportunities that really could help us achieve something that's bigger than that. For me, that would be an amazing outcome, because I think we do really work within this real estate transactional model.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's exactly where sort of we see our work at big going, but also what we hope for in any community, any place around California, is that folks can begin moving from the transactional to the transformation. And I not to bring up more constraints, if you will, but when we were talking, you know, and it'd be interesting to see this map, but you were talking about the kind of mosaic that you need to navigate of each parcel and place. Is each little parcel and place in this 700-acre space. And so it could be that there's an overall sense of this, and it could be that you apply the seeing potential framework to each of those parts. Like, what do we ultimately want for this particular space or parcel in moving that forward? And what's the story we would tell to weave into the larger story of those parcels? So I saw Deb's hand was up, and then Carlos, and then Gracia. Am I saying that? What?
You can say Gracia or Gracia.
Gracia. Okay.
Gracia.
Gracia. Okay. Great. Thank you.
We're sitting here. Organization.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What you said. What we did at Alpha is we are attempting to put to power share. I think that might be by putting it's really long-term perspective, right? So to come into different this stuff, then build this stuff, right? And instead of having the development into and we bridge and working big spruce, which is pretty long term. It's so important. Really tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Dan. Yeah. Hold on. I think we're going to Carlos, and then Gracia, and then we can come back to you, Bob and Sean.
I really love that last comment. Thank you. Idea of engaging really developers, builders, traditionally marginalized communities is a retractive thing that takes a lot of nurturance, care, and support systems being put in place, which does take time, and we just have had access to institutionalized knowledge, and so if we are committing to doing things in a different ways, and that has to be part of it. I first learned about the naval, I'm sorry, the base closing. I worked in 98, so it was had just been closed, and then I became developed in 2006. I came to a big developers meeting, and everybody had big ambitions for the site. It's by far my favorite place to come and jog and really contemplate the future. And I'm so happy that there's still a lot of opportunity for development. It wasn't rushed. There are opportunities like that. But to me, it's really about how do you step out of the institutions and really the forma, the real estate pro forma idea is, and I'm so glad that was said, because embedded in pro formas are a bunch of values and timelines, efficiency, return on investments, and what are you looking to invest in? And so even just putting that aside and saying, if we started ground up, one of the biggest tweaks to the system we can make, that the system is extractive top down currently in America. And so if we were to shift that bottom up, it means how do we empower not just local, but how do we take advantage of the resources we have, which include the sun, the wind, the views, the land, the buildings, and then try to realize that as an asset balance sheet, but also how do you develop income in your profit and loss statements in a way that benefits nature and people here. It's a big thing, and yeah, I'd love to be a part of whatever happens here. That's
Yeah, beautiful. Gracia.
Yeah, so what comes to mind, it's funny because the word grassroots came to mind, but you're gonna have to stay with me because I'm gonna refer to suburban. So I live and work here. I'm like kind of a weirdo. I do sometimes cross the bridge when I have to. And I have two small children that are 2 and 4. And as I become more integrated into the community, not just within my job, but like the people who for me, the outcome I want to see is that everyone is excited about what's happening. Like anywhere I go, I was at like a mom's book club and I was like, did you know the Base Reuse and Economic Development team is building a new city? Did you know that we have the seaplane? Did you know that there was like a circus in town on the that was like a bunch of people were organizing to like bring their kids there? There is this like what I would refer to almost as like a cultural boom happening here. And in addition to like all the housing and the commercial. And so it's everyone in this room goes and like tells their friends what's happening here. That's the outcome I want to see for people excited. I even mentioned the climate and resilience plan. I'm just like preaching the gospel of the things happening. I want you all to join me in that because I think if there's an excitement, the residents will get behind it. More residents will get behind it, and city council here really cares about what their constituents care about. Start to see some of that story coming of all the things that have been done, and the excitement that is to come. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Couple more comments in here. We're gonna go. Bob.
I'm gonna jump back real quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
My architect friend Ron was talking about 50 years ago or whatever it was about slowing down. I think what he had in mind and the other folks that were on the planning board at the time was they needed to slow it down then, so the wrong thing was done. The time to act is now.
Right.
So I mean, in light of recent events,
Yeah.
we see how quickly the
Yeah.
and I think it has to be done with some vision, of course. And Jeff, what Danielle mentioned about visibility, I'm not sure if this is exactly what she was getting at, but I mention of a plan of some type, and I'm wondering if there is any sort of a visual rendering design elements that can be put out there to get people excited about this. Because I think, you know, people will get excited if they realize the potential here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think can folks comment on Bob's question about the visual renderings? I know at lunch, at least you'll get a treat of seeing some of what Alameda Point Collaborative is planning. And there's actually visuals right upstairs of specific projects, but other things. Katie, do you want to speak to that?
I just wanted to, just introduce maybe more. Yeah, I think really, big architects, we've been
engaged in the ReShape project, the master plan and the architecture community process. I just wanted to like, we're here for it. I think the image making, just to pick up on what Abby and Danielle has said, like, images do speak a thousand words of that. And about capitalism, I feel like if you do garner enough excitement and public appeal, often with an image, PR, money does tend to flow in these times. So yeah, and I know Seth too, so his friends start his own practice of, we have designers in the room they're here for it.
Nice, beautiful. Thank you. And do you want to say anything else about visuals or?
It's funny because like I think back to the concept plan that was done like in 2010 as my regular go-to, which is just wild that like I go back to this 15-year-old, it's just a block map, right? It's just like, here's the different sections. But it is such a vast area to get your head around that like one rendering doesn't encapsulate it. And that's part of the struggle, right? But I think it's a great idea. I think that visually telling the story would be good too. And we have tons of maps and resources on our website, but what is that one? I don't have that one that I go back to. So it's a good acknowledgement of that. Yeah.
Thank you. Sean, I know you've been waiting. Thank you.
I'll shorten it. I'm really curious, because I think a word we've danced around with haven't been called out yet is community ownership, shared equity, where communities involved from the jump from the start. There's a big nationally around that. I don't know if anyone attended social purpose real estate conference in LA recently. There's just so much energy here all along the Western Coast, places like Denver, East Coast, Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. So thinking, think global, act hyper local. Some of those learnings across the country, you may see things that resonate resonate here if you're trying to achieve. There's a big network around that. I know with respect to some of the folks in the Trust shared equity cooperative model space, that they're folks that have a lot of energy and expertise and brilliance around this to make. Maybe it'll be
Cool, great, thank you. Any last comments, reflections, or questions before we enjoy some lunch and then get outside and see a little bit of what's happening around here? Yeah, Danielle.
Just going off of kind of where this conversation has been going, which I think is fantastic. It seems like possibly with some of the funding that's a little bit of funding that's available or that you have right now, one of the outcomes might be some kind of another convening or a kind of a showcase. So we're trying to figure out how to tell that story and have sort of a convening that you can invite the community to, invite some regional leaders to, and really try to kind of elevate what's possible here and invite some other people to imagine kind of what this place could be and meeting.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's part, I mean, Jeremy talked about that a little beforehand. Like that's definitely what we're hoping, and we wanted to pull folks together, really not as just this is the conversation, but this is the start of the conversation and the beginning of this process, even with those of you who've been deep in this work for a while. And that absolutely includes community residents. And that's a lot of what, Deb is doing and was speaking to, is how does it extend over time? And it's really great to be, with all the work that we do, it's really wonderful to be in different places, because places that are so close together, like Alameda Point and South Berkeley, have so many differences and so many similarities. And it's Jeremy and I were in a conversation the other day, and we started, which I really think encapsulates a lot of our work at Big and the work that you all are doing, is to capture that, not just nurturing people, places, and nature, but what the soul of a place is, and to really be able to lift that up, even underneath all of the other development and all the other stories that have happened. And so it really, I wanted to end with just a little anecdote from a place that's really much farther than even South Berkeley from here, but the city of Detroit. And I was there several years ago, and folks have heard stories and, know what's happening, might know what's happening there. But I was there for a conference that I helped organize, 8 years ago now. And we partnered with the Grace Lee Boggs Center, and folks might know Grace Lee Boggs is an amazing, amazing activist organizer, author, and somebody who's a volunteer who'd been an activist in New York, this salty old guy, took us around for the site visits that we were doing. And we were on the grounds of the 35-acre, like, wrecked Packard auto plant in Detroit. And we were standing, there's just still, like, even in the middle of the streets, there's bricks, but there's trees growing out of the tops of these buildings. And he just stood there, and it was like this Sermon on the Mount, this proclamation. He said, we are at the end of an era of human history, and it is up to us to determine what the values and what the practices are going to be moving forward. And I really feel like when you're in a place where it's like, wow, there's this amazing development that's happening and so much that's going on, and then you still see these images just next door. You'll, if you haven't seen them already, but you'll see them at lunch. You're looking out on buildings that have fallen into disuse, and it's like, what are those opportunities building forward? So I'm excited for all that folks have been doing here and in other places around the Bay Area and around the state, and excited to see where this goes from here. So we'll get to continue chatting over lunch, and wanted to thank everybody. Want to do like calling out the band specifically. So my co-facilitator and co-designer Devaney at Build It Green, thank you. Sam helps implement our builder developer side programs, but has been helping on the tech side and stuff today. But many of you might know her if you're interested in our small development incubator or the builder developer affinity group. Sam's a great person to talk to. Alex, is our comms associate, and I have a new title for Alex, which is regenerative storyteller. So we'll work on that. And Jeremy, of course, our executive director, who's really led us through tremendous transformation in the last 4 years. And again, thanks to Andrea and Gina, who you might have seen, but she's been fantastic, and all the folks here at Alameda Point Collaborative, and to our speakers, Abby, Andrea, and Tracy, who's no longer with us. So thank you, everybody on Zoom, for sticking around for so long. We will reach back out to everybody, whether you were here in person or virtual, with next steps, a little survey, questions about where do we go next. But for now, we're going to take a break, sign off of Zoom. Lunch is right upstairs. Andrea or I can direct you. It's just down this long hall, and you'll see a set of stairs that are over on your right-hand side. And then you just go up those stairs, and there's a really lovely sitting space where we can enjoy some food together. And then 1 o'clock, we will ask you to be back down here and do a little probably herding to get everybody onto the bus. Which should be a really nice experience. And you'll have a lot more elbow room than we expected. And, a couple sandwiches again, if you want to eat that. So thank you, everybody. Yeah.